entering and moving further into this age of AI. I have never asked an author this before. You'll be the very first one.
Go for it.
Did you use AI to write the book?
Oh, absolutely, I did. Absolutely. And you know what? Okay, so we're going to talk about this for a while because, like, in my mind, what I owe my readers is the best book I can write. And the best book I can write would utilize AI. It would utilize AI as a research assistant. It helped me find examples that I would have never come across. I wanted to explain the concept of switching careers. So I needed well-known people who switch careers in a big way. And it told me about Julia Child. I had no idea that Julia Child was a spook until her
Yes.
30s when she changed to French cooking. That example would not be in my book were it not for ChatGPT. And so I use it as a research assistant. I use it to help summarize things for me at the end of every chapter. I use it for checking grammar and stuff. I use something called Quillbot. And like I said, I mean, to use a cooking analogy, since I brought up Julia Child, when you go to a restaurant, it seems to me you just want the best meal possible, right? So who walks into a restaurant and says, I want the best meal possible? But you cannot have used a microwave. You cannot have used a food processor. You could not have used an electric knife. It has to be all, artisanal knife, artisanal egg beater that you use your hand. You cannot use anything. That's the kind of meal I want. I mean, I'm being facetious, but you just want good food. You just want a good book. And if ChatGPT helped me write a good book, God bless you. I'll use another analogy. Let's say that you want to hear a good speech, right? So, you're like thinking Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy, Barack Obama. And then guess what? I hate to burst your bubble. There's no Santa Claus. And all those people, well, I don't know about Martin Luther King, but I interviewed Barack Obama's speech maker. So, I hate to tell you, but Barack Obama did not write all his speeches all by himself. So, is there any difference between Barack Obama using a really talented speechwriter or using ChatGPT to help him write a speech? I see no difference. The bottom line is the speech remarkable or not?
You bring some very interesting points because in the financial services space, I know AI is somewhat contentious right now. There's been discussion, debates back and forth. Alvin Toffler, back in the 1970s, wrote that the illiterate, since we're talking education, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. I think about my kids, and we're already collaborating with Chat GPT. My daughter's written 2 books published through Canva, actually printed through Canva as part of a GT project. And
and and she's 10 years old.
it's mind blowing to see how her thinking is now being reshaped in a whole different context. And
Right.
so what would you say to those that are thinking, and this is not hyperbole, I have had a CFO in an executive meeting basically say AI is cheating. They would rather have their team do the work the old school way. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. When we were in school, did you use a calculator like a TI-82 or anything like that? And he said, yeah. I go, well, I was the kid learning to use the TI-82 and program the formulas in there so I didn't have to actually think harder. Is that cheating? And I was like, no, I didn't cheat. I just figured out a way to do something even better. What would you say to those who think that AI, and it's a matter of perspective, if they think AI is cheating?
I'd say life is passing you by. I mean, you're exactly right, right? I mean, if you use a HP 92 or a TI, well, I mean, if I go to your bank, are you using abacuses? I mean, well, like how do you, I
Seashells.
mean, I don't know. Are you writing on dried papyrus? I mean, what are you using? I mean, and I think you owe it to your customers and the shareholders to use the best technology you can. And
Yeah.
like if I were a bank and if I gotta believe that you're already doing this, but you have got to be able to apply AI to discover patterns of fraud, right? Patterns of fraud, AI can instantly identify. I don't know how you would do that, with your abacus. I mean, I don't understand. Like,
Right.
oh, wait, something's wrong here. Oh, something's wrong. I mean, there's fraud here in Columbus, Ohio. I mean, why not use AI?
Is it because change is hard?
Well, I mean, I guess so, but like your daughter is growing up with AI. She's never going to go back. There is no going back, right? I mean, it's like my kids grew up with phones. What am I going to tell them? Phones are ruining your mind. Go back to a telegraph. I'm going to buy you a dumb phone. It's going to have 10 keys in it. Um, I just think we just need to get on board. Now, don't get me wrong, bad things can happen with AI and
Sure.
ChatGPT can make stuff up. But I mean, like a lot of the negativism about AI, they go down in this hole. Like they say, well, what happens if the Russian LLM is angry with the American LLM and decides to start a nuclear war, and the American LLM sees the Russian LLM doing that, so it sends its missiles, and now it's the end of the world. So AI is dangerous because it could take over and it would start, firing nuclear missiles. Well, I hate to tell you, but I think that there's much greater risk of Putin and Kim Jong Un and Donald Trump firing missiles at each other than two LLMs. I mean, if I had to make a choice,
You,
I would rather trust ChatGPT than your fascist dictator of the day.
yeah, when you think about this idea of thinking and thinking remarkably, think different. It was an iconic campaign with Apple. What inspired you to connect the book to the Think Different campaign?
Well, at an intellectual level, I think that thinking different was fine in 1997, where you had to think different, like Picasso or Amelia Earhart or Richard Branson or Martin Luther King or Albert Einstein. I mean, back then, if you were thinking different, maybe you were using a Macintosh. But if you were thinking the same, you would have just jumped on the Windows bandwagon. So that was the whole point of that campaign, right? Think different, be innovative, be a visionary, go against the grain, get out of your box. But I think that now thinking different, it doesn't have the value of the social implications and the environmental implications. And so we got to go beyond thinking different to thinking remarkably. Like what makes a difference? What's remarkable? Not just different. You can be different and bad. We want you to be remarkable. It's a higher standard. It's a taller fence.
This quote that you referenced, the commencement quote from Steve Jobs, it's actually come up in my field of vision within the past couple of weeks, a couple of times, being able to connect the dots looking backwards.
Right.
Um, how have you seen dots connected backwards in regards to your own journey
Yeah.
of remarkable growth?
Okay. I've already told you a part of the ultimate looking backward dot connection. All right. So I'll give you a real tangible example. The forward in my book is by Jane Goodall, the Jane Goodall. Now, in my humble opinion, if you were writing a book about change and making a difference, there is nobody in the world who would be better for that forward than Jane Goodall, right? She's the mother of all change and making a difference people in the world.
How'd y'all become friends?
Well, okay, I'm going to tell you this. Okay, so now just to recap the story, sixth grade teacher tells my parents to put me in his private school. Parents listen. I get into Stanford because of that private school. I meet Mike Boych, who gets me into Apple, who, you know, I'm successful at Apple. I become visible. Now, fast forward 20 years, and the director of TEDx Palo Alto writes to me and says, I know of you, guy. I don't know you personally. I'm a Macintosh user. Other people that know you said that you'd be a great person. I have Jane Goodall has agreed to be present or to make a appearance at TEDx Palo Alto. I want you on stage to interview her. So, arguably, connecting the dots backwards, because of that sixth grade teacher at Kalihi Elementary School convinced my parents to put me into a private school. That's how I got to be on stage with Jane Goodall.
Hmm.
So now I'm friends with Jane Goodall, and we have done a lot of things for each other. Whenever she calls, the answer is yes. And whenever I call, I honestly tell you, I think she always says yes. I asked her to write my forward, to record a video for me, to record a video for my podcast, and she always says yes. And you have to understand, this is a 90-year-old person who travels 300 days a year, 300 days a year, right? I mean, and when Jane Goodall travels, she's not, just traveling on a Gulf Stream, Taylor Swift style, pulls in, limo pulls up, she goes to the Ritz Carlton, hangs out, gives a 1 hour talk, gets back in a Gulfstream and goes back. I mean, she's working from morning to night, meeting with kids and fundraising and doing all this stuff. I could not do 300 days of that kind of travel. I don't know if I could do 10 days of that kind of travel. So anyway, so she says yes and all this. And so this is a story of connecting the dots. Now, I- if I mean, I'm being completely facetious, but there's no way anybody could say, okay, right now, you listen to that sixth grade elementary school teacher because someday it's going to lead you to be friends with Jane Goodall. Hard to imagine, that. And so, what's the consequences of you only can connect the dots looking backwards? Well, I think that this means that you should do a lot of sampling because you just never know who is going to be the person that years from now is going to be the game changer for you. So you need to meet a lot of people, a lot of diverse people, and you also, I think, you need to default to yes. So, and stop thinking about optimizing your current situation, achieving work-life balance, and all that. Just keep saying yes. Just say yes and figure out how to do it. And then by saying yes, you'll have, more opportunities, you'll have more data, you'll have more exposure to the world, and someday it'll all pay off. So just default to yes.
Meeting more people, making these human connections, I think will be an important practice, particularly for leaders in the age of AI, community banking leaders, for example, having conversations with entrepreneurs in their local market, hypothetical example,
Yes.
recording the conversation, unlocking the human story of growth.